Everyone has those moments they look back on and go, what was I thinking? It's those times that we all remember most and that we want to suppress and hide from everyone else to escape judgment. Those moments can often make for the best stories, but can be a bit tough to tell as we want to forget that they ever happened. I'm going to share 3 of my worst moments and explain in detail how they went down. Just last summer, I'd been hanging out with a few of my friends when we all decided to take our boats out for the day and run up to the bank where we would always hang out in Bertie County on the Chowan River. To do this, we always had to put boats into the water in Edenton and ride close to 10 miles up the river, which takes quite a while on the little boats we have with the weak motors. We spent the rest of the afternoon skiing and wakeboarding and decided to build a small fire and hang out for a couple more hours into the night. Everything was going great, and we all had planned to leave back for the ramp in an hour. As we were picking up our belongings to leave, I got a severe thunderstorm alert on my phone, and wind started to pick up while rain began pouring. It was one of those freak pop-up storms that's caused by the summer weather. We figured it's better to be back in the trucks than outside alone on the sand through the storm, but we would have to make the trip back across the river to Edenton to do so. We took off at about 11 p.m. into the river, and that's when waves about 4 foot high started rolling and lightning was striking all around us. We had just a single spotlight for 3 boats to drive by, and the current separated us a couple times while the waves crashed over the side, filling the boats. Somehow, we made it back to the landing without anybody getting hurt and without sinking a boat, though we came close. In January of 2019, me and one of my best friends took off to go duck hunting on Sweetwater Creek behind his house. On the way into the spot, we hit a large underwater stump that threw us both out of the boat. By the time we swam back and climbed in, we were soaked through every layer, and the weather was a cool 22 degrees that morning. Excuse me. We decided that instead of the easy 1 mile journey back to the truck, we should instead keep going because a real man would deal with the cold. After the hunt, we climbed back in and we took off. At this point, I really did not feel cold, and I'd later found out it was because I had been so cold for so long, I had just adjusted. Upon getting home, I go to take all my gear off and get a shower and find out that the whole way up both of my arms it has started to turn a bit blue, and this is what I believe to be the beginning stages of hypothermia to this day. My final story does not actually involve a boat or the water, but instead my truck. About 4 months before I got into a wreck with it, I was having problems with my brakes, either locking up or barely engaging. The mechanic had quoted me about $1,100 in parts and labor to have it fixed, which I really did not want to spend. Later on, I decided I would drive slower and brake earlier until I get it fixed. One day, I'm pulling up to an intersection in Washington when the light turns red and I hit the brakes only to roll past the line and stop in the exact middle of the intersection just before the other lane started moving. After having to reverse back to where I was supposed to be, I immediately went home and the very next day went and got my truck worked on as soon as the shop opened that morning. On to the second speech. There are very many big arguments within not only the United States but the entire world. Arguably the most important and pressing issue facing mankind today is that of climate change. The climate has always been rapidly changing since the beginning of time itself, but there is substantial evidence now to believe that humans are influencing climate change and possibly speeding it up with the carbon-heavy lifestyles we live. According to NASA and the team of climate professionals there, the average temperature of the Earth's surface has risen by about 2.12 degrees Fahrenheit in about 30 years. This increase may not seem like much, but it is allowing the oceans to slowly rise as ice continues to melt around the poles. There are a few things that most people can do to help. Many people have attempted to use more sustainable modes of transportation and are driving electric-powered vehicles. While this is great and all in concept, it is not really doing much, as cars are still powered by coal-burning factories to produce the electricity. It is instead better to use more public transportation like a large bus carrying 50 people than 50 people in their own cars. The bus allows us to use less of the unsustainable natural resources we burn, like gasoline, as we all know that electric cars are not feasible yet and may not be for a long time. Personally, I've tried to make a small difference by planting more trees in my yard, as well as planning to install some solar panels on the roof to power the house without using an external power grid that burns fossil fuel for electricity. Things like the solar panels can be relatively affordable when you take into consideration the large incentives in place for people to use solar. Slowly transitioning into a society who uses less and less fossil fuels will save us all in the long run and help to ensure that the Earth's climate stays on its natural course and is preserved for future generations to behold its natural beauty. The issue of climate change is very important to many people, not just myself, and I hope to see more and more progress each and every day towards a brighter, more sustainable future.